Hey y'all, and welcome back to another installment of the Book of Brianna, a podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brianna Whiteside, and I'm so excited to welcome you into another installment. Y'all know we're in a faith series, and last week I kind of disclosed I was grieving because we are counting down to the ending of my career. I just wanted to be honest with you. This week, I want to talk about you. I want to talk about having faith in your story. Do you know why we remember the greats? The greats in history? Do you know why we're able to maybe quote speeches from Martin Luther King, speeches from Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, their writings? Do you know why history remembers these people? Because their stories are being told. Their stories are being told. Now, if you've been following me for any stretch of the time, you know that my favorite quote is by Winston Churchill, and it goes something like this, and I'm paraphrasing. It says, "History will be kind to me because I intend to write it." And you know, I love that because it shows the power of our stories. It shows the power of each individual, but it also reminds us that your story is important. So many people think that their lives are insignificant because ultimately they're not sharing their story. And if the Bible says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, what do you think testimony is? It's a story. It is how you overcame. Now, testimony always looks backwards. And what I've been doing on my channel is letting you in on the process right now. But there are moments when I look back and I say, I went through this and I did this and I did that. And you may find some type of inspiration and some type of hope because I am what? Sharing my story. And it is in sharing the story that I believe that you will gain some type of inspiration for your own life. But what about you? Who do you share your story with? Or are you so ashamed of what you walked through and what you've been through that you bury your story? Maybe you're even trying to outrun your story. I know how that feels too. Outrunning my family history, outrunning things that I've gone through and things that I've done that I'm not too proud of. But let me tell you this. If you've overcome those things, you have to begin to tell your story. And this is not telling your story in this Rissa Tessa way. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about sharing where you've been and sharing with others how far you've come. The reason why you may follow me, it could be a lot of reasons, but I think you follow me because I tell a lot of stories. I tell on myself. Sometimes I indirectly tell on others by telling on myself, but I tell my story. And it is in me telling my story that you're gaining insight and awareness, courage even, but it's also me monetizing my gifts. I remember I had a friend who always used to say, never let a crisis go to waste. Never let a crisis go to waste. Never let a good story go to waste. And I think the enemy has been masterful at keeping our mouth shut and making us ashamed of our stories so that we won't benefit from the pain we've been through. Because I believe that if you paid for that pain, you should be benefited from it. But also to just kind of keep us locked down and also not help other people move forward. You can share your story in a meaningful way. You can package it in a way to help you create generational wealth. You can package it in a way to help set somebody free. The world loves an underdog. We love a good underdog story, don't we? A rags to riches story, don't we? And I want to talk about that because sometimes we don't think we have anything to offer. But what if your story is your offering? What if your story, what you've walked through, what you've been through, what you've overcome is that thing, that contribution you have to society? Are you sitting on it? Are you bearing it? Are you saying, I don't have nothing and God didn't give me anything? He gave all of us things, but maybe you buried yours, or maybe you're still dealing with the shame of it. But let me tell you this, whoever tells the story first wins. I generally try to tell on myself first because I take back ownership and power over the narrative. I used to be someone who was afraid of my story until I wrote my first book, Woman of Royalty, Ruled from a Place of Authority, which walks people through the story of Esther and her journey from moving from an orphan girl to a woman in the palace. But it was also in writing that book that I had to start telling the truth. And this was 2018, the book was published. But when I started to tell my story, like, shame started to crop up. It was a shame. It was also fear that I was gonna have to tell my mama the truth about some things that I went through. And, you know, I remember telling her that story or letting her read the book. I didn't tell her the story. I asked my mother to write the foreword to my first book. And in writing the foreword, she had to read stuff she didn't know. Because y'all know, we don't tell our parents everything. I've been at my mother's house since I was 18, over 10, 15 years. And it was letting her read the truth that she struggled. She struggled. She didn't know half of the stuff that I had walked through, half of the stuff that I shared, and she was sorry. And she used to think like, man, what if I could have done this? Would you had done that? Or what if I didn't work so much? Or what if? And I remember her crying on the phone saying, this is hard. Reading your story, reading what you've walked through, this is hard for me. And I said, I know. But this is the truth, and this is going to help so many people. Because, you know, my Woman of Royalty book was the book I wrote about identity. This was my journey to finding my identity, because I got so frustrated with people saying, you need to find your identity in Christ. And I'm like, how? And no one could ever tell me. But it was through God showing me how, and then me sharing that book with the world, that I started to realize your story is important. And as long as you sit on those ugly parts, as long as you sit down and you suppress the story and pretend like you didn't do those things and pretend like you didn't walk through that and pretend that you are perfect, you'll never live authentically. You'll never change the world in ways that you are supposed to change the world, because you are a fraud. You are a liar. You are omitting truth and presenting this shell of a person that really won't help anyone. You're wrong. And I had to get over myself and get over the shame and get over the torment and get over the taunting to say, my story does have significance. And that is who I was. But look at me now. Look at who I've become now. And I'm not perfect and I still struggle, but I had to come to the place where I had to stop hiding from me. I was hiding from me in the past. And, you know, some of the things we decide in ignorance, and some of the things we decide in pain. And as a girl growing up without a father present, as a girl growing up in the hood, as a girl, you know, not having as many opportunities as everybody else, I was ashamed of my past. And I had to get over myself. And I'm like, no, this is who you are. This is what shaped you. You're not that girl anymore. You're not her. You'll never be her again. Give yourself an opportunity to arise. Give yourself an opportunity to thrive. And sometimes we worry about judgment. Other people judging us, what would they say? Okay, they're probably gonna say something about you anyway. Who cares? They've probably done things and got skeletons in their closet. They trying to keep the door closed on too. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You know what matters is that you grew from it. What matters is that you learned from it. What matters is that you overcame. What matters is that you're still here. That's what matters. And we can't continue to get caught up in what will other people say about me, because they don't have a heaven or a hell to put you in. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They are words. But what if you're not giving yourself a chance because you don't believe that your story has any significance to help someone? I remember telling my brother a certain truth that I went through, that I walked through. He had a certain perception of me, like I'm this goody two shoes, I'm this, I'm that, I ain't did nothing, I ain't never walked through nothing. When I went ahead and told him some stuff, he was like, oh. So the person you think has never done anything, you have this perception of her. Let me tell you the truth of what you didn't see. Let me show you the sacrifices and the scars and the wounds. Let me let you in to the truth. And you know what happened after that? Our relationship got closer, because he felt that I was more relatable. He felt that, see, she's really overcame things, and, you know, maybe I've misjudged her. But I don't blame you for misjudging me, because I used to wear a mask. Baby, I was a haunted house one time, okay? My heart was haunted. I used to hide because I didn't want other people's perception of me to change. I wanted them to see me as perfect and ideal. No, when life started life and I had to start telling the truth. It's funny now. It wasn't funny then. And now that, because I speak so freely, I'm just like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I begged this man to stay with me one time, and I lost all respect for myself. Yeah, I know my work, but I throw a little sale sometimes. Yeah, y'all, when I tell y'all, you don't make it out of the hood without scars, without stories. When I tell y'all, y'all don't know the half of it. Y'all don't know the half of it. I remember telling someone a particular thing about myself, and she was like, not Miss Goody Two Shoes. And I'm like, yeah, me. Let me tell you what I did, and it was stupid. And she was shocked. She's like, I would have never known. I'm like, I know you wouldn't have known, but let me tell you this. And I did these things, and I was this person, but I'm not ashamed of that story anymore because it shaped me. It made me who I am. It made y'all appreciate me. You didn't even know why, because I was standing in a truth that you didn't understand yet. Who could you potentially be isolating by not believing in your story and telling the truth about yourself? Because you're not that person anymore, right? Your testimony can help somebody overcome something. Why aren't you sharing it to do your part in the world? Why aren't you bringing your little cousins closer, and you see what they going through and you see what they did, and you're like, y'all know what? I remember when I used to do this, and this is what that got me, and this is what I learned. But you don't have to do that. When was the last time that you stopped judging people and really remember what you've gone through and how God has brought you through? When will you believe in your story and have faith in your story, that your story can transform nations? When? We're still talking about Martin Luther King because of his story and his dream and his activism. We ain't talking too much about his preaching. We're talking about those other things that we know that have shaped society, that we can say, look, y'all, remember Martin Luther King did this? And if you're into Malcolm X, no shade, that's the other side of the coin. He has some valid points too. Look, y'all, Malcolm X did this, and this is what happened. And these people, this is why history remembers them, because they were brave enough to live their lives out loud and not be hindered and not be suppressed and not let fear of judgment or anything else steal from them. What about you? Will history forget you? Will history forget that you were alive because you decided not to make your contribution, and history will erase you from the history books? What will you be remembered for? How will you live your dash? And I'm not saying tell everything, because some things, just if they ain't came out, just don't disturb the dead, okay? Let them die. Let them stay dead. But what about those things that could help someone? That's faith. And that is you also being selfless, putting yourself out there, saying, y'all, this is what I did, but this is how I overcame this, and you don't have to stay like this. And you know, there's hope for you because there was hope for me. When I share my debt journey up with y'all, how I climbed out of that consumer debt, I was ashamed when I first started. Now I'm not ashamed. Why? Because I've overcame it. I'm not there anymore. This story has been used to inspire many. This story has been used to sell products. This story will always be relevant, because that will always be people's pain points: relationships, health, money. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. You need to profit from your pain. You didn't go through that for no reason. You went through that because of whatever reason, and now you can use that experience to push society forward, lift as you climb. But so many of us bury our stories out of shame and not feeling like we'll be listened to. But how will you know if you won't be listened to, if you won't even turn the mic on? You won't even open your mouth. How do you know? Because there may be someone who's holding out for hope. There may be someone who's waiting for you to open up your mouth, and they can only hear it from you. You're the only person that will get through to them. It's so funny. A lot of people start following me from the Let There Be challenge. And it wasn't supposed to be a challenge. I told y'all this all the time, but I literally just shared a video that went viral. And I just said, I started this thing last year and it worked for me, and I think you should do it. And from that just testimony that it worked for me, went viral. Influence started to grow. I wasn't ready for it. I was like, oh my God. But it worked, and I kept working it, and I kept doing it, and I kept moving through it, and I kept doing all the things because I shared one story, and the algorithm, and I was able to begin growing and branding and expanding. I believed in my story. It wasn't long, it wasn't expansive. I think it was a 90-second video. And a 90-second video turned into so much more. pushed me into the future in ways that I didn't even anticipate. But what about you? What can your story do for your family, for your children? I'll say this, me and my mother started getting closer. Not only did we just work on our relationship, but when I started talking to her as a woman, my whole perception of her changed. Talking to her as a mother, you know, I was super judgmental as a kid and growing up, I didn't understand. But when I got to that age and she started telling me her story, I'm like, huh, I see. Wow. And I have a different level of grace and a different understanding and a different appreciation. But she had to be willing to share her truth with me. And I had to be willing to listen. And that is how our relationship grew. But you can't grow unless you water the story. The story was hurtful. I get it. You walked through a hard thing. But here's what this lady told me back when I was in undergrad. She was an older lady. Her name was Jarasha. I was working at Logan's Roadhouse. Y'all, if y'all didn't know, I was a server and a hostess in my day, at least for 6 years of my life. And my boyfriend was cheating on me blatantly. Like, he was disrespectful with it. And I was sitting outside on the bench outside. We was taking a break. I was having a break and I was hurting. My heart was hurting. She said, you can decide to leave or you can decide to stay. But she says, you're not going to be the first woman to make this decision, and you won't be the last. And that always stuck with me. You're not going to be the first person to experience this, and you definitely won't be the last. And so you have to decide what you're going to do for your life. With that, I still lingered with my boyfriend for a little bit more, and then eventually cut it off. But her encouragement or her words always stuck to me. You ain't the only one walking through this. There are people who walk through this similar situation before you, and there will be girls who walk through this situation after you. What are you going to do? That's the question. If you stay, that's on you. If you leave, that's on you. You get to decide. And it is in me sharing these stories that I do share with you here and there on this channel and in the podcast and, you know, my journey with God that, you know, I just remember that, you know, we know that our stories aren't just about us, even though we feel the impact and the pain of them. But I remember that we should have faith in our stories because those stories are impactful. We still read the story of Jesus because it's impactful. We still quote the story of Abraham because it's impactful. You know what I mean? Like, we still quote these people in the Bible because we know their stories. Will history be kind to you? Will history remember you? Or will you go down as someone who once lived but never made their mark or impact on society? The choice is yours. It's your life. I'm just here to tell you to have faith in your story. Have faith in what you've overcome. No obstacle is too small. If you made it through grad school, tell your story. If you made it out of the hood, tell your story. If you overcame after an ugly divorce, tell your story. Tell your story. It's always someone who wants to hear it. Let your story work for you. Tell it responsibly. And let God be God. I want you to get outside of your comfort zone, get outside of yourself, and free yourself by having faith in your story, which means having faith in your life and where you've come from, and understanding that your story can literally push you into the future. I hope this has encouraged you. I hope this has given you things to think about, of course, and inspired you to move forward. And I'll talk to you soon in another installment of the Book of Brianna. Bye.